Hey, Kirk, good to see you. Thanks for ringing me up.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to get some reception out there on the beach. I hope
I
I can
know.
you can you hear me over the surf?
I can. It's a clear day, so I'm not having any interference. Hey, I'm so glad we're doing this welcome back episode.
Yeah,
We establish some kind of ground rules. If that's cool. Like, what do you see this looking like?
sure. I mean, I figure we can just kind of talk through things from the top, or I mean, should we share some ideas in the chat box, or do you think,
Yeah,
I've got kind of a basic outline.
yeah. Chatbacks is kind of tough out here, and there's only two of us, so I don't think we need to like raise hands or anything like that. It sounds like just a sort of a discussion back and forth. I think we could probably just talk through it. Do you have an idea of what you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, I think we'll just touch on sort of the welcoming everybody back, and then walk through sort of what we've been up to this summer, and then maybe touch on one of our e-lessons that we shared last year, just about building classroom culture, how it is we can establish sort of ground rules for conversation.
That's good. That's good. I like this. Now that we're kind of reconnecting this way, I think it's good to kind of understand like what's expected and what it is, how we're going to interact. And it sounds like we've sort of mapped out what we've been working on and a little bit of a preview. And I think that's a good welcome back. So I think we established our expectations.
Sounds great. All right,
Cool.
now let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Hello, and welcome to our Back to School special. My name is Kirk Higgins. I'm the Director of Content at the Bill of Rights Institute, and I'm joined by my colleague, Gary.
Kirk, good to see you. I'm so glad you called. How are things?
Oh, not as good as you, it appears, Gary. It seems like you're really taking advantage of the summer break.
It is, yes, exactly. This is a great special because, summer's a fantastic time and I'm just ready to get back to work. Although I have to say, we have been continuously working through the summer. So this welcome back is a really nice preview of what's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it. And, it has been a busy summer for us. We've been still working on some content, trying to develop few new aspects. But what have been the big accomplishments for you so far this summer, Gary?
Well, I'm just coming off of some two really great events that we hosted. We went ahead with our student program, our Constitutional Academy. We did it virtually. It was fantastic, if I may say. Kids from across the country came together, and what a group, Kirk. I have to say, they have been staying in touch still with each other. Their ideas on impacting the community have been incredible. They learned a lot, not only from the program itself, but from each other. And they've been working on a really cool program that we'll actually be sharing with a lot of people called our My Impact Challenge program. You think we'll be talking about that today, Kirk?
Yeah, I think we'll touch on that a little bit. And that's sort of thinking about community involvement, how students can get involved and really make change within their communities. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, it's a great curriculum and project that they can do that they develop. It's all about student agency. That was sort of our big theme of the Constitutional Academy. It was called American Voices. So it was about all the viewpoint diversity across our country on so many different issues, but also honoring that they, as young people themselves, not only have a lot to say and think about, but also how they communicate through spoken word, written word, and like you said, through impact, which is pretty cool. And then we are still in the middle right now, as of the recording of this, of our Summer Institute. The theme of that was justice and the judicial branch, and we had a really nice balance of scholarship with our established scholar, our expert, a woman named Barbara Berenson, who some of you may have seen, as well as a lot of our curriculum. We introduced LLPH, or Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness, which we might also talk about sometime today.
That's right.
But the teachers were amazing. We had about 50 teachers from across the country, and they really voiced a lot of what their experience in 2020 has been, and a big focus on what they expect in 2020 and 2021.
I'm pretty amazed that you've been able to do all of that from the beach, Gary.
It is. I have been
incredible.
hard at work here at the beach. I just, okay. All right. Reality is I'm actually here in my office, safely behind closed doors, working hard on all of our BRI stuff. So you blew up my spot there, Kirk.
Oh, it's all right. I can still see a little bit of the beach in the corner. So
there you go. Yeah, it rolls in and out.
yeah. No, but that's great, Gary. It sounds like those programs were really effective and that we were able to make a shift into presenting those online, which is the first time that we've presented that those programs online, they are programs that we do every year, but obviously in a new format given everything going on with the continuing COVID-19 pandemic.
Absolutely. And it was entirely because of who was there, right? Both the students and the teachers, they were just so willing to bring questions and ideas and share with each other. And they really, even though it was online, those that came really said that they appreciated just having some contact with other people across the country. And even though it couldn't have been in person, it really was great to see them interact with each other and really form bonds.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And I think we'll touch on that community aspect in a little bit. But I did want to share, you mentioned Life, Liberty, Pursuit of Happiness, our new online digital resource for U.S. history classes, that was the big thing that I did this summer. So we got that resource published. It's an online free digital textbook. If you're interested in finding out more, we'll have a link down in the description of the video for you to check that out. But we worked with over 96 different scholars from across the country to write the text, and we really think it's something really tremendous. I mean, not only does it have planning tools to help you plan out your everything from just a single class to an entire year, but it is a fully digital text, so it can be delivered in whatever format you may need. You can give assignments out, and it's all aligned to the AP US History framework as well. So you can get in there, play around. There's over 400 different pieces of content that you can use in a myriad of different ways, from narratives to background essays to primary source activities and lesson activities. So it's really something tremendous, and we're excited to get it out there, excited to share it with you all. And so I hope you'll check it out. But along those lines, Gary, you said you had the opportunity to talk to teachers, and we're all sort of sitting on the edge of a new semester, one that is going to be unlike, I think, any semester that we've been through as educators. What was sort of the sense that you got from the teachers that you were able to talk to, and the students too?
Absolutely, yeah. Being able to talk to the students and teachers, and not only in our programs, but also, people have been reaching out for the past couple of months, from classroom teachers to people in districts, like we said, and students. And the one consistent bit of feedback that's at the top of everybody's mind is the phrase, "I don't know what's going to happen." And I get that, right? I mean, we're in a nation of lots of school districts, and states are making decisions, and the ways those go, how districts interpret them, decisions that are being made. There are many, many, many decisions being made, and with good intent to base it on something, right? But the effect is that things did not pass quickly, as we didn't know, right, in the spring. And so in this planning, the uncertainty of what class will look like is still real as of the time we're recording this. And when I say that, I mean teachers still, many across the nation, don't know in the coming weeks if they will be in person with a full class, if they will be entirely online with classes, if they will be in person for some of the days and not others. Increasingly, there are teachers who are wrestling with the idea of having what we call simulcast, where they actually have some students, but also are accommodating the students who are not comfortable or not able to come to class, and kind of running two classes simultaneously. And so a lot of this, the word is really about uncertainty, right? And what this all looks like. The other thing, if I can say, has to do with building class culture. What's on the minds of both the students and almost all the teachers we talk to is there's a difference between starting a year with everybody, getting through 2/3 of it, and then switching, versus starting a year with a class of kids that you may not yet have met, and how to build culture, how to establish that. There's a huge difference between changing from something that exists with a class to starting that way. And they're working really hard, right? I mean, everybody is just really trying to figure it out. But it's tough. It's really tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, especially with everything coming up this fall too, obviously we have a presidential election, which is always, is the big focus whenever those things come up. I mean, there's a lot of civic activity that's been going on over, this summer, and I'm sure that's going to continue into the fall. So, there's a lot, I think, going on outside of the classroom, that there's opportunities for that to bring it into the classroom, but challenges there too. And I think culture, you were talking about culture, I think that's a really interesting one. And I think I'll just mention it. We can walk through a lesson we had put together last year at the beginning of the year, talking about sort of using the Constitution to build civic culture in your classroom, right? So how is it that you can help outline the parameters in which you can have good civic and civil discourse, civil conversations where people feel as though they're comfortable bringing forward their opinions, that those opinions are going to be treated with respect and legitimacy, and that there's not developing animosity, which that becomes even more of a challenge at a distance when you haven't been able to meet online or been able to meet in person. And so I'll pull that up really quickly, just so that we can step through it, because this will be one that we make a few tweaks to, given the current situation.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can jump in while you're talking about that, that's a lot of the feedback we got is seeking foundational things, right? Seeking foundation in what they teach. And when I say that, I mean that in two different ways. There's like foundations in the content itself, right? Just foundational concepts that need to get there, but also the foundational platforms, the foundational how to convey this, how to engage with it. And I say that just because this whole idea of cultures, and I think what you're pulling up here is part of that foundation. I think what has happened in the past few months is that teachers have a great question across the country, which is, what is essential to teaching now, right? There have been ways that we've been developing it for years and years and years. When everything sort of changed, when it's sort of like a reboot happening, it's asking teachers to say, what is the key things that must be taught? Because I may not be seeing you as often or in the same way. And yet there are these key things, these foundational pieces that are still there, both in what I'm teaching, but also how I'm teaching. And this is from the mouths of the teachers themselves.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think getting down to one of the basic things that I think about, and this roots into a lot of the principles and virtues that we talk about at the Bill of Rights Institute a lot. But the key thing here, I think, and this activity reflects that, is how is it that we interact with one another? Because on a very foundational level, that's where relationships within classes begin, right? You form a community in your classroom. What are the rules by which that community is interacting? How is it that we are formally or informally going to share our ideas and go through the process of education, which can at times be a very vulnerable activity? In one in which you are wading into an area where you may know something, you may not know something, but we're challenging ideas, and we want it to be a place where people are feeling creative and supportive and inspired to kind of work at some of these questions. And so this is an e-lesson that we put together last year, and we'll be continuing these e-lessons this year. And I think once we wrap up with this, we'll talk about a few other resources that we're going to be releasing throughout the semester to continue to support educators. But this one I always really like, because it's sort of taking a very fundamental piece of our civic reality, which is the Constitution, and looking at that as a means of talking about rules and expectations within your own classroom. But what I think is interesting here is that the process of developing that doesn't come down necessarily just to the educator, but it's on the students to develop what those rules are. And I think this is a really unique opportunity to do that, because all the students, being in different places, interacting with each other possibly for the first time, have an opportunity to understand that what they're wading into with the educator is sort of an unknown, right? There's a shared understanding that this is going to be something new, but that we're all going to work together to make the most of it. And I think this activity is a way of thinking about how it is that we can set those expectations and set some parameters around what discussion is going to look like, so that you can get the most, I think, out of a distance learning environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's exactly as we sort of started talking about the experience of both students and teachers in terms of involvement and agency. And what I really love about this one is it starts off with just narrowing down to what does it mean to be a citizen, but not in the traditional sense, I think, in terms of, your eligibility, but it's more your membership of something, right? Your participation in something. And I think it's a great way to start the class, because if you are a member of this class, if you are a student in class, there is this membership, which requires what does that participation look like? It requires going a little bit deeper into what are the expectations, what are the habits we're going to form early on in a classroom. And that's why, again, this is a perfect example of taking the spirit of this particular lesson. And if you look through it, it has things like pencil and paper that are shared in groups, and there's an assumption of being in a class, which may be the case. But it's flexible enough to say, but even if it's not in a class, what is that essential piece of this lesson is understanding what it means to be a member of a group, in this particular case, a citizen. And back to our other curriculum, we talk about citizenship that way quite a lot, right? What is your contribution to this? But also, as we said before, that term agency, right? That students there's a buy-in because the students are part of the building of these habits from the very, very beginning. It's ways for them to connect beyond the very surface, to say, we are laying out the foundation of what this class will be this coming year. And I think that's super powerful in this lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it already challenges sort of the assumption. We're not talking about legal citizenship, right? In the definition of the law, we're talking about citizenship as membership. And I think that's really key. And stepping through this, like you said, I think this is a fairly flexible lesson. You can't break students into group, although sometimes you can, depending on what tool you're using, to interact with students online. There are ways of doing that. But even if you can't, just asking students to send in via chat or their ideas, verbally discussing those different ideas of different concepts and things, trying to group those things together. I could even imagine this being sent out as an email maybe after the first class, and having students respond, and a teacher then showing up with those different groups and then walking through the second half of the activity with the students from there. How else might you adapt this, just given your own experience now having adapted our couple programs this summer, Gary?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because it's funny. Had you asked me about this in March, I would have a certain perspective on how to do it. Now, after a number of months doing things, and again, all of our viewers out there, I'm imagining at some point, maybe you've been on some kind of teleconference in the past 4 months, that those adaptations, that habits happen as if there's not one way to do it, but it is decided collectively, right? So part of what I've learned is that almost every time I've interacted in some sort of teleconference, and the way, even in the ones that I designed, the speakers themselves, let's call them the teachers of a particular session, are part of, but establish these classroom habits with the people there. So perfect example of this is every time we had a speaker at our summer events, they each had a different way to say how we're going to interact. That was established not only to the participants, but with the participants. So almost every time there was this established, I would like to present this way. If you have a question, you could click the button that says raise your hand, or unmute yourself, or write in the chat, or write it on a separate, there's separate platforms now where you can kind of take notes and send communications. That was always established by the teacher, the leader of a session, but not top down. It was collectively, how will we best communicate? What is the best way for everybody to serve? So what I found was my plans for how to communicate were best served if I gave many options in the beginning. And if we allowed voluntary voicing of different approaches from the participants themselves, basically mini versions of what this lesson is.
Yeah, I think that's great. And so everyone knows, we'll go ahead, we'll be updating this lesson, and we'll also post a link down in the description. So if you want to see that, we'll also have a link to this original one if you just want to see how we approached it last year in a different kind of setting. But I think that's all great, Gary. And I think getting down here, sort of the conclusion that you come to at the end of this lesson is the idea that, hey, we now have sort of some informal rules that we've formalized a bit, that we all have buy-in into, that will now help us conduct conversation and discussion in the classroom for the rest of the year. And so I think it's a great way. And again, we're tying that back into something that's foundational, right? Back into our Constitution does this, right? It's our agreement that has been agreed to, that become the rules by which society, our government and society interact and organize itself when it comes to what the role of government is and how it is that we function. And so I think it's an interesting, both a civics lesson, but also a practical way of beginning sort of that conversation around what it means to form societies, what is the role of government, how do those things come about, and then has, I think, hopefully a positive effect in your classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even words in that lesson themselves about the focus on producing not only a civil classroom, but a productive classroom. And I think that was the lessons that we've been learning in the past couple of months, at least in our programs from teachers, is it's not just about getting along, forming community. It's also, how do we most productively communicate, have everyone be heard, have some sort of progress of action that we have, and that comes from establishing these things. Even the word Constitution itself is a fascinating word in terms of who's coming together, what's being made, and what its purpose is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, great. Well, I'm glad we were able to step through that lesson. I hope it was useful for all of you watching. And again, we'll have those links down in the description below. But I just want to talk through a couple other things that we're going to be doing this fall that we're pretty excited about. One that comes to mind immediately is Constitution Day is coming up on September 17th. So we will be hosting again, like we did last year. Gary and I will have sort of a live format, walking through some different constitutional issues and topics that day. So we're really looking forward to that. It's coming up really quickly. I can't believe it's already the end of July here.
I know. Just yesterday, I was on the beach.
Yeah, right? Just a few minutes ago, I think you were on the beach. But we're also going to be producing a lot of different YouTube content this year, one of which is scholar conversations, or conversations with scholars from Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. So the U.S. history resource we were talking about, like I said, we worked with over 96 different scholars to get those things written. And by those things, I just mean those different resources and elements and narratives. And so we're going to be having conversations with those scholars, both about the content that they wrote about, but also just about what it means to be a historian, how they go about thinking about these topics, what it means for them to explore these different ideas, have conversations with other scholars, because a big part of that resource isn't just another U.S. history textbook whereby we're telling the story of American history. What we've tried to do is set up an environment in which students can engage and ask questions of the text that allow them to dig deeper. And so one of the ways we've done that is by having point counterpoints, where two scholars write essays about the same topic, but from a different perspective, so that students can see how it is that those kinds of debates and things unfold, because history isn't just something that happened. It's something that we're all constantly looking and exploring and thinking about and trying to figure out what it means for all of us and what kind of context it gives us. And so we'll be doing those throughout the fall, and we're really excited about that. Another exciting piece connected with Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness is a series we're calling A Bridge to the Past. This is going to be a close reading of sorts, but it's going to be shorter, and it's going to be focused on visuals. So it's all going to be different visuals. The first round, at least, is going to be from Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness, but it's going to be looking at those visuals and doing sort of a close read, if you will, of those visuals. So an analysis and art analysis. It's called by a lot of different things, but our colleague Mary Patterson is going to be walking through those. I'm really excited about that. I think looking at visuals is an interesting way of taking in content in a radically different way than just text.
No, absolutely. And this actually came up through both the Summer Institute and Constitutional Academy, because of the way that we were presenting this. Blowing up the concept of content was a really key thing, right? And the idea of text are obviously very, very important, but the definition of text, case in point, if it is a visual or something even audio, there's still content there to dive into. And teachers are really, really excited to use the methodology of analyzing text, no matter what that text looked or sounded like. And so that's super useful. And I love that it goes along with what you were saying earlier, that to have dialogues based on a resource that the nature of which is to invite people to dialogue. and to analyze, and that there are lots of different ways to take a look at it. And you want to have those lots of different ways because these are complex ideas that are benefited by so many different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say too that, even though these are connected to that resource, they're all meant to be viewed independently. So there is no need to be working through the resource in order to get a lot out of these videos. We really hope that the videos are natively interesting themselves, and that hopefully there's something that you can have your students review and look at, or if you yourself find it interesting, take a look. Hopefully, I think we'll all get a lot out of them and a lot out of that exploration. In addition to those two items, we're also going to continue doing our close readings. So that's where we're taking a text and really going through a line-by-line analysis of a variety of different texts. We're going to try to sort of go through the sweep of U.S. history, starting in the colonial period and going up through as close as we can to the present day. But we'll see how far we get. But that's our intention now, and hopefully those bring out some good conversations and are also tidbits that you can use in your classes. And then we'll also continue to do our eLesson series. Obviously, we showed you an example of that just a few minutes ago, but we're doing new ones all the time. We're going to have ones that are helping you tie back into, again, foundational kinds of things, especially as we move further into, again, an election cycle, trying to find things that we can pull out and have really meaningful conversations about historical events that may connect to things that are going on now, but also exploring how conversations we're having today are similar to conversations that we've had in the past, what those foundational things are that we're discussing and debating about, and what that all means when it comes to how it is we relate to one another, particularly in civil society. So, Gary, what other student activities and teacher activities do you have on the horizon for this fall?
Yeah, well, I mean, if I were to give it an overarching approach to the fall, I would say it ties back to how we started this conversation, saying what does something look like, what needs to be there, and what can it look like? Excuse me, in a somewhat uncertain future. So as far as both student and teacher programs, we're charging fully ahead with everything we had planned in terms of helping support teachers and students with their exploration of either concepts in history or either historical content. So we're taking a look, again, it's an election season, we're looking a lot at programs that have to do with the executive branch. We're still celebrating our votes for women and the celebration of the 19th Amendment, which again, August is here. So that's huge. But beyond that, we've got programs with students that are summits, taking a look at different things that concern them. We are, as we said, launching our newly refurbished version of My Impact Challenge, which seeks to have students engage with their communities and go through a really cool process where they take a look at different aspects of impact, whether it is through entrepreneurialism, where they will work on business plans and budgets and understand how that works, as well as policy and how engaging communities and government structures work, and philanthropy and community building, and all these pieces coming together to really make a big impact. We're having different types that still exist. Not only our usual programs of having that balanced workshops, shall we call them, with our scholars and our curriculum, but also into techniques like conducting Socratic seminars, Socratic practice, or different methods. And I said it ties back to the early thing I was talking about, is everything we're planning. The question that we're always going to have is, what can this look like if it is in person, if it is not in person, but beyond that, also happening synchronously or asynchronously. Like, big question that we have that we're working through in terms of, right now you and I are talking live, but there's also working not in tandem with each other, but still working together asynchronously outside of this. We're constantly working with teachers on all these different aspects of how this content can be engaging with their students and working with students to engage with others. So everything's moving full steam ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one other element when it comes to students interacting with each other, our Think the Vote platform will be up and running this fall as well. And so that gives students an opportunity to engage with other students across the country on just different topics where they can have discussions about those issues. And I'm really excited about that
Yeah,
as well.
it'll be an enhanced version. If you're familiar with Think the Vote, you may know the bi-weekly questions, but this is going to be a weekly, really enhanced version. We're partnering with others. We're having a lot of fleshed out opportunities for teachers to tackle. I mean, November 3rd is coming real fast. And so lots of things to wrestle with, but we've got teams of people who are supporting that. And I have to say, those teams of people are all teachers themselves who are really considering what's important to teachers and students in a really real way.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that end, if you have any needs or there's any way that we can support you as we move into the fall, please reach out to us. And you can find us on Twitter at BR Institute, on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill of Rights Institute. And we're here to support you. So if there's anything that we can provide that we can, or topics that we can cover that would be supportive, or different lesson ideas that we could share that would be supportive, just let us know, and we're happy to help however we can. And so with that, again, welcome back. Thank you all for joining us. We'll look forward to continuing to engage with you throughout the semester.
Looking forward to it.